The sun dipped low over the dusty horizon of Willow Creek as Emma wiped her trembling hands on her apron. The small town diner was emptying out, and her shift had nearly ended, but her heart was pounding harder than it had all day. Tomorrow was her sister's engagement party, the one where her ex, Jake, would be the guest of honor. She hadn't seen him since he'd shattered her heart 2 years ago. The thought of walking in alone, facing his smirk and everyone's pity, made her stomach twist with dread. Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of hay and rain from the ranchlands. That's when she saw him, Luke Carter, the rancher who sat in the same corner booth every night, quietly sipping coffee, lost in his own thoughts. The townsfolk said he was a man who'd buried his heart with his late fiancée, never smiling again after that night. But there was something about the way he looked at the world, as if he'd seen too much pain and still stood tall, that made Emma's breath catch. She hesitated, clutching the edge of her apron, then took a shaky step forward. "Luke," she called softly. He looked up, eyes like storm clouds meeting hers. "I know this is going to sound crazy," she whispered, "but, could you pretend to be my boyfriend for one night?" For a long moment, silence hung between them, awkward, heavy, charged. Then his brow furrowed, confusion flickering into curiosity. Luke leaned back, studying her. "Pretend," he repeated, voice low and rough, as if unused to conversation. "Why me?" Emma bit her lip. "Because you don't gossip, you don't ask questions, and you're kind." She forced a laugh to hide her desperation. "And maybe because I can't think of anyone else brave enough to fake a smile beside me." Luke's gaze softened just slightly, something unreadable passing through it. After a pause, he exhaled slowly. "One night," he murmured, "just one." Relief washed through Emma like a warm tide. She nodded, thanking him breathlessly. But as she walked back toward the counter, she could still feel his eyes on her, steady, searching, as though he already knew there was more behind her request than she dared to admit. The next evening arrived with golden light spilling over the town square. Emma stood outside the old community hall, her dress fluttering nervously in the breeze. Every laugh echoing from inside reminded her of the people she'd avoided for years, people who whispered she wasn't enough, that Jake had moved up. Her chest tightened. Then Luke's pickup truck rumbled to a stop beside her, his broad frame stepping out with a quiet confidence that made her pulse race. He offered his arm without a word. She hesitated before slipping her hand into his, warm, firm, protective. When they walked in together, the chatter inside stilled for a heartbeat. Eyes turned, whispers began, and Jake's smug smile faltered just a little. For the first time in years, Emma felt seen, not as the heartbroken girl everyone pitied, but as a woman standing tall beside a man who looked at her like she mattered. Throughout the night, Luke played his part perfectly. He smiled when she spoke, leaned close when someone asked about how they met, and his deep, calm voice told the story she couldn't. "She burned my pie," he said once with a faint smirk, and the table laughed. Emma felt her cheeks warm, not from embarrassment, but from something unfamiliar. Safety, comfort. But beneath his quiet charm, Luke's eyes carried weight, the shadow of something unspoken. When their gazes met across the table, it felt like two broken hearts recognizing each other's scars. And in that moment, the act didn't feel like an act anymore. It felt dangerously real. As the music began and couples took the floor, Jake approached, holding his fiancée's hand, smirking. That same old smirk. "Didn't think you'd show up, Em," he drawled. "Guess you finally found someone who could tolerate your late nights." Emma froze, shame prickling under her skin, but before she could respond, Luke stepped forward, his arms sliding around her waist with quiet authority. "She's the best thing I've ever had the luck to meet," Luke said, his tone calm but laced with steel. "And I'd appreciate it if you showed her the respect she deserves." The air went still. Jake blinked, caught off guard, then muttered something under his breath and walked away. Emma's heart hammered in her chest, tears stinging her eyes. She whispered, "You didn't have to do that." Luke's gaze softened. "Yes, I did." That night, as they danced under twinkling lights and the laughter faded into music, Emma realized she'd asked him for one night of pretending, but the way he held her, steady and gentle, felt like something far more real. And deep down, Luke knew it too. He'd come to protect her heart, but it was his that began to heal first. The night ended with laughter, but when Luke dropped Emma home, the silence between them felt different, heavier, warmer. She turned to thank him, but the words tangled on her tongue. You didn't just help me, she whispered, you made me feel enough again. Luke looked at her, his eyes shadowed yet soft. You always were enough, he murmured. Then he tipped his hat, turned, and drove off into the night, leaving her heart fluttering in the quiet glow of the porch light. Over the next few weeks, Luke returned to the diner more often. At first, it was casual, coffee refills, light conversation. But soon, he was staying until closing time, helping her stack chairs or walk her to her car. The town began to whisper again, but this time, the whispers didn't sting. They sounded like hope. Emma caught herself smiling more, laughing at his dry humor, watching his guard slowly drop like melting snow in spring. Yet beneath the growing warmth, something darker lingered in Luke's eyes. One evening, after the diner closed, Emma found him standing alone outside, staring at the stars. You ever lose someone and feel guilty for breathing without them? He asked quietly. Her chest tightened. He told her about Clara, his fiancée, how she'd died in a horse-riding accident 2 years ago, and how he'd blamed himself ever since. I thought if I kept to myself, maybe I wouldn't hurt anyone again. His voice cracked on the last word. Emma stepped closer, tears burning her eyes. Luke, you didn't hurt me. You healed me. Her hand brushed his, and for the first time, he didn't pull away. The air between them felt fragile, sacred. That night, something shifted, not loud or sudden, but deep and sure, like a seed quietly breaking open beneath the soil. But the peace didn't last. A week later, a stranger arrived at the diner, a real estate agent from the city. Luke's ranch had been put up for auction by his creditors, something he hadn't told anyone. The drought last summer had ruined his crops, and he'd fallen behind on payments. Emma's heart sank when she overheard the conversation. When he looked up and met her eyes, the shame on his face cut her deeper than any words could. That night, Emma went home and stared at her reflection. For years she'd believed she was the one who needed saving. But maybe, just maybe, it was her turn to save someone else. She took a deep breath, grabbed her savings box from the cabinet, every tip, every extra shift she'd worked since her father passed. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. The next morning, she drove to the ranch. Luke was sitting on the porch, head in his hands, surrounded by silence and unpaid bills. When she placed the envelope on the table, he frowned. Emma, no, I can't take your money. Her chin lifted. You once pretended to love me to protect me from my past. Let me pretend I can fix this. Tears filled her eyes. Just one night, remember. But maybe this time, we don't stop pretending. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he stood and took her trembling hands in his. You deserve someone whole, he whispered. She smiled through her tears. Then let's build each other whole. Over the next few months, the ranch came alive again. Emma moved into the small guest cabin, cooking meals for the workers, helping Luke rebuild fences and mend roofs. There were long days, laughter-filled dinners, and quiet nights where they'd sit beneath the stars, saying nothing, because they didn't need to. The ache that had haunted Luke's eyes began to fade, replaced by something gentler, something real. One evening, as autumn painted the fields gold, Luke found Emma kneeling in the garden, her hair loose and glowing in the sunset. He stood there for a long moment before walking up behind her. You asked me once to pretend, he said softly. She turned, eyes curious. Yeah, his voice shook slightly. I can't pretend anymore. Before she could respond, he knelt beside her, pulling a small, worn box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, simple, silver, and beautiful. I thought I'd never love again, he said, but you taught me how to live again. So, Emma, can I be your boyfriend, for real this time? Her breath caught, tears spilling as she laughed through them. You can be a lot more than that, she whispered, and when he kissed her, it felt like every scar, every lonely night, every lost dream found its way home. Months later, the diner was busier than ever, and the ranch flourished with life and laughter. Every morning, Luke would stop by for his coffee, lean over the counter, and kiss the shy cook who'd once asked him to pretend. And though it all began as an act, everyone in Willow Creek knew, that night, the pretend became real. Because love, in its truest form, never needs a script. It simply finds two broken hearts and writes its own ending. Heart.